And now to Washington, where things got heated quickly. Acting IRS Commissioner Steven Miller was grilled on Capitol Hill in the first of a series of investigative hearings about the agency's targeting of conservative interest groups. There were accusations, denials, but few answers into who knew what and when. Eamon Javers has been following the hearing from Washington. Eamon?
Good evening, Tyler. You're right. There were a few answers there. A lot of questions still unanswered now, even after Miller's testimony today. He testified for just about 4 hours all told. Republicans very eager to get answers to some of their questions, producing a number of very uncomfortable moments for Miller. Take a look.
So that was a lot of questions, sir.
It's one. How can we conclude that you did not mislead this committee?
I did not mislead the committee.
You're a law enforcement agency, for crying out loud. I was a cop for 33 years. Now, you've raised your right hand today. Did this committee have the right to know what you knew? Yes or no?
I answered all questions truthfully. I also will tell you that it was.
Let me ask. I'm going to go to Mr. George. I'm going to go to Mr. George because my time is. You're not going to cooperate with me, Mr. Miller, and you've been uncooperative during this hearing.
What day did the conversation take place?
I'd have to look back at my notes on that, sir.
You've got notes on that?
I'd have to try to find them. I'm not.
Why did you say you had notes if you don't think you have notes?
Sir, please.
I just think the American people have seen what's going on right now in their government. This is absolutely an overreach, and this is an outrage for all America. I yield back.
All right.
Now, Tyler, Miller, of course, is the recently ousted acting chief of the IRS. The new acting chief of the IRS, or the incoming acting chief, was brought into the meeting room with Jack Lew today, the Treasury Secretary, who directed him to find a way to restore America's confidence in the IRS. But, of course, we're going to see a continuing series of hearings going forward next week. We're also going to hear from the number 2 official at Treasury, Neil Wolin, who will be testifying before the House Oversight Committee next week. And we might get some more answers at that point, Tyler.
Eamon, setting aside what happened in this case as we try to get to the bottom of it, is it a legitimate function for the IRS to look into whether a group with a political interest qualifies for tax-exempt status?
Absolutely it is, but the criticism here against what the IRS did is that they weren't looking at all political groups in the same way. They were screening for names like Tea Party, Patriot Group, 9/12 Group. Conservative-leaning names were given an undue degree of scrutiny that liberal-leaning names were not given, and that's the crux of the argument here. That's why this was so unfair. But you're right, the IRS does have a role to play here in figuring out whether these groups are deserving of that nonprofit status, or instead are political groups masquerading as nonprofits.
You know, Eamon, you talked about restoring the public trust, so there's going to be a lot of digging to figure out what went wrong here. And as they go through all of this, to what extent could this, open up more scrutiny by the IRS in looking at returns for everything, not just audits, but all sorts of stuff, sort of a Pandora's box?
Well, it's an interesting question. I actually think that one of the effects here might be the opposite. It might intimidate the IRS, ironically, to not go after some of these groups as much. But a lot of questions were asked today, and one big unknown here that we're still left with at the end of this day is who was the IRS official who actually approved this conduct? Who put this political screen in place going after the conservative groups more so than the liberal groups? Now, Miller was asked that question several times today, and he never produced a name. He said he simply doesn't have it. So that's one thing that investigators both on the Hill and over at the FBI are going to want to know at the end of all this.
All right, Eamon Javers reporting for us from Capitol Hill tonight. Thanks, Eamon.